evening, everybody. My name is Jim Scanlon. I'm the superintendent of the Westchester Area School District, and thanks so much for coming out this evening to hear about the Westchester Cyber Program. We've done a couple of open houses already, and tonight we want to focus on how the Cyber Program will operate, and in particular, how we will address the needs of some of our special needs children in the district. On the screen, you will see periodically throughout the presentation a QR code. That QR code will get you in to ask questions. There's also a link at the bottom of each of the slides. If you click on that link, you can submit questions as we go through the presentation. The program tonight is also being recorded. So if there's some people that you know of that weren't able to get here tonight, this will be recorded and we'll place it up on our website so people could come back and reference the information that we present here tonight. You know, our cyber program is something that was part of our comprehensive plan 2 years ago and really was targeted for grades 6 through 12. So we started working on this last summer, pre-COVID, before we had the shutdowns in the spring. And we actually started to work on our digital curriculum to get it up online and offer a cyber option for our parents. The K-5 program is something that has developed and evolved, and primarily because of COVID-19 and some of the concerns that parents have with sending their children into school before there's a vaccine. So we are putting together a K-5 program as well for this year for parents who want to choose that option. The cyber is very different than the remote learning that we experienced last spring, and tonight we'll go through that and we'll demonstrate how it's very different. The cyber program does require a lot of parent help and parent partnership. We call it learning coaches. Some adult has to be available at home to help the kids access some of the technology and get into some of the programs. And then there's some additional services, again, based on whatever's in the individual education plan for your child that we'll work through and let you know how that works tonight as well. The synchronous learning, some of it is synchronous. Most of it is asynchronous, where assignments are posted. There's videos that are posted in discussion boards. But again, we'll walk you through all the differences in some of those programs tonight. So thanks again for coming out. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Pupil Services, Dr. Leanne Ranieri.
Thank you, Dr. Scanlon, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight to learn a little bit more about the cyber program and how it will be implemented for students that are our diverse learners. We're going to be talking tonight about our students that have IEPs, 504s, GIEPs, or our English learners. And we'll talk a little bit about what we can do to support those different needs. It's really important to understand, though, that each of those children are very individual and have individual needs. So we will be following up with having meetings, IEP meetings or 504 meetings, GIEP meetings, to talk about how the services students currently receive can be implemented in the cyber environment. And in many situations, it may be a blended model that we need to use so that the students can receive some of those services in the brick and mortar setting, in addition to what's being provided in the cyber environment. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through. I do want to introduce others that are going to be here tonight talking. We have our supervisors of special education, Lisa Pfeiffer, PJ Dacus, and Melissa Kleiman. Our supervisor of English language development, Dr. Chrissy Eagles. Our supervisor of student services, Mrs. Carol Rothera, and the director of elementary education and gifted K-12, Dr. Sarah Missett. In addition to talking a little bit about our diverse learners, we'll talk about the cyber program itself, orientation, some enrollment information, and then we will also have an opportunity for questions and answers at the end. So for the types of questions that will have kind of themes, we will answer those at the end as much as we can. If it's very individualized, what we will be doing is, getting back to you afterwards so that if it's something specific to your child, we certainly don't want to be able to address that in a large group setting. But if you leave your email address in the document, the bit.ly document, we will certainly follow up with you for your specific questions. Up on the screen is our contact information. We will also have that at the end of the presentation so that you can reach any of us about questions that you might have. We will also have our cyber leaders will be talking. There's our leadership team. We'll be talking more specifically about the cyber program because it is a cyber program that was developed for all students. Our role is how are we going to address our diverse learners within that program. So this is the team that's really spearheading it and putting the program together and really can talk about the nuts and bolts of that with our questions. We do know that many of you, if not all, participated in the programs that were last week for elementary, middle, and high. So you had a general overview of what the cyber program is all about. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Eagles, and she's going to start the next part of the presentation.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So looking at cyber, there's a lot of different questions, and one of the big ones is how is the cyber program different than emergency remote learning? So one thing you should know is that we've been developing this program for over a year, first with the intention of 6th and 9th grade, but obviously we've expanded at that point. So the teachers have received extensive training specific to teaching in a cyber environment. And similar to other cyber schools, as Dr. Scanlon said, parents do play a vital role in their children's learning. So there's a lot of parental involvement, a lot of support that parents do give. You'll see more asynchronous learning take place in a cyber environment and more synchronous, that would be like a live Zoom session in a remote learning environment. Another question that comes up frequently is, what if we have another extended emergency closure? And if that were to happen, we would have our cyber students would remain in their cyber programs. Our brick and mortar students would again go to that remote online learning, but they could expect more synchronous learning this go around, meeting curricular expectations, and students would receive grades for the work that they do complete. Another frequently asked question is, will I be able to transition back to my building during the year? The answer is yes. We understand fully that our face-to-face learning is best for kids, especially at the elementary level. So should you want to send your child back to a brick and mortar setting, we would allow them to do that. We would just ask that we wait for a natural break. It gives a little bit of an easier transition. So that could be the end of a marking period or like a break, so spring break, winter break, any of those types of closures. Moving forward, I'll turn it over to Melissa, who can talk to you a little bit about students with an IEP.
Hello and good evening, everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Melissa Kleiman, and I am the Special Education Supervisor in the Ruston feeder pattern. On the bottom of your screen, you will see the QR code that you can scan if you have any questions. Also, the bit.ly link that you can type directly into the computer with your question. We do ask that your questions remain pretty general, as this is a general presentation. If you do have questions specific to your child, you can email the appropriate supervisor, and we will put those emails up again at the end of the presentation. So students with IEPs, there's been quite a few conversations taking place already. So we kind of summarize some of the questions that have been the most asked. So we'll try to go through those right now. In general, what will services look like? So if you have an elementary age student, most direct instruction and related services will be provided at the brick and mortar building. When I say direct instruction, I'm referring to any of the special education classes that your student may participate in. At the secondary level, we'll be providing direct instruction in either the cyber or the brick and mortar environment. For the most part, related services will be provided in the brick and mortar building. We will make these decisions based on an IEP team meeting. So the IEP team will need to convene and determine how your child's needs can best be met in a cyber environment. Where will my child receive services if the IEP team determines that in-person instruction is necessary? If the IEP team determines that your child's needs can best be met in the brick and mortar setting, then your child's special education classes, for the most part, can be held at their brick and mortar school. Whatever your home school is, we're going to try to keep students in those schools for the direct instruction classes. And transportation will be provided for your student if they require direct instruction to take place in their home school. Who will serve as my child's case manager? Right now, we are currently in the process of hiring teachers for both the elementary cyber program and the secondary cyber program. So depending on your child's needs and how many services they're getting in the brick and mortar setting, it's possible that either one of our new hires will be your child's case manager, or it's also possible that a current teacher who's currently teaching in our building will be your child's case manager. Will the accommodations in my child's IEP be provided in the cyber environment? For the most part, we will be able to accommodate most of the specially designed instruction that is currently in your child's IEP. As I stated previously, and will continue to state a couple of times throughout this, we will need to hold an IEP meeting for all children who are interested in the cyber program, and your IEP team will go through the IEP and determine how your child's needs can best be met. But in terms of the specially designed instruction and accommodations, for the most part, we can provide them in the cyber environment. The final question that a lot of people have been asking is, what exactly will direct instruction class look like in the cyber program? As I stated earlier, when I say direct instruction, I'm referring to the special education classes that your child may have in their IEP. So for the most part, as already explained, cyber program is going to be an asynchronous program. And when we say asynchronous, we mean that activities and lessons, videos will be posted on one of our platforms for you to watch at your convenience. It's a very flexible program. When we say synchronous, we mean that it will be a teacher zooming in with your student, providing live instruction. So our direct instruction classes will have a combination of synchronous and synchronous instruction as part of them. The reason for that is we want to make sure with the synchronous instruction that we're meeting all of the child's needs. So we'll use that time to gather progress towards individual IEP goals, make sure your child is making progress on their goals. We'll also use that time for some small group instruction, as well as pre-teaching and reteaching any skills that are being taught in the regular education setting. It is very possible and most likely that if you have a child with an IEP, they will be in a blended cyber program, meaning that some of their classes will take place in our brick and mortar buildings and other classes will be completely cyber. So then once again, an IEP team decision, we will meet, we will discuss what classes your child their needs can best be met in our brick and mortar setting versus how we can meet their needs in the cyber setting.
Carol, you muted.
Sorry, I got it. I do that all the time. Hello, my name's Carol Rothera. I'm the supervisor of student services. I supervise all 504s in the district, just a little over 900 of them. So there have been some questions about 504s. So one of the questions is, will my child need to have a 504? In most cases, absolutely, your child will still need the 504. It will be important that you connect with the case manager of your child, which is the second question. That is your counselor at the school your child attends or should be attending. That counselor is the case manager for all 504s in their building. I mean, at the high school, it's according to their caseload during the alphabet. So you would contact those case managers to set up a 504 meeting. We know that 504s are very environmentally focused, the accommodations that we have. Example, you have a child that has ADHD. the disability of ADHD, accommodations frequently are sit closer to instruction, or all those kinds of accommodations would be different in your home. So we really need to look at what is in the current 504, what needs to be changed, what needs to be pulled out, and what needs to be added. Your child may need additional contact to make sure they're staying on track. So this might be something we might need to add, so that during that meeting, you can make a final decision. This is the best choice for me and my child in going forward in the cyber program. So that's mostly the main questions about 504. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah Missett. I'm the Director of Elementary Education and the Gifted Program in the Westchester Area School District. A lot of questions coming in about GIEPs. Yes, we will honor the GIEP. K to 12, we will have support services in place. As I mentioned before, at the elementary level, we now have a GRT in each building, in all 10 of our elementary buildings. So the GRT will be responsible for connecting with your student if they have a GIEP. In addition to that, we will also make sure that all cyber students have full access to all of our programs, all of our support programs, but most important for your child who has the GIEP. Will it be the same teacher that was assigned to your building? That depends upon enrollment. I just don't know the answer to that yet. Your student might have or share a GRT with another building, kind of like what we've been doing the last couple of years. But we will most definitely program for your child with the GIP, fulfill all the SDIs, and make sure that they are receiving their GIP enrichment or supplemental classes.
Hi everyone, this is Chrissy Eagles again, talking to you about English Language Development Services. So two big questions that people have in regards to English language learners are, what would the services look like in a cyber environment, and where would the child receive the services? And that really depends on the child. All of our ELD services are very individualized. So the amount of time per day and the frequency per week depends on the individual student and their English language proficiency level. Similar to a high school student, they could be scheduled anywhere from 1 to 3 periods a day, or even at the elementary level, some students receive services, once a week for a half an hour. Some students receive it, an hour a day, 2 hours a day. So it's very individualized based on the student's needs. And where they'll get their services also depends on the particular student. So it could be anywhere on the continuum of in the brick and mortar setting, in the cyber setting, or even just having the ELD consult with the cyber teacher to make sure that services are being provided. The big takeaway is that the cyber teachers will be making the appropriate accommodations based on the student's language proficiency level and the student's needs. So, that would all get worked out. Similar to a student with an IEP, we would have those meetings with the students and their parents to make sure that we're all on the same page as to what the student would need to be successful.
Hi everyone, I'm Kristen Barnell. I'm the supervisor of our cyber program, grades 6 through 12. As we shared earlier, the cyber program, while it certainly is expanding, given our current global situation, this is something that we've been planning for years. Starting 6 years ago, we launched the one-to-one devices for all of our students, and we've continued to expand that. We're now including our K-5 program, and that's what I want to speak to specifically here. So as you can imagine, as we detailed earlier, a cyber program is very different than sending your children to school every day. The role of the parent and guardian, or what we're calling our learning coach at our K-5 level, takes on a significant importance to our students. As you can imagine, putting a student who is in a high school class, who is a little bit more autonomous and able to self-pace and self-regulate, is able to progress through their content and through their classwork, sometimes a little better than our younger students. Because of that, we do have a parent agreement form or a learning coach form that we will invite you to sign if you're interested in registering your student for the K-5 program. You'll see the overview of that program and our expectations for that learning coach here. While this is a K-5 requirement for our cyber program, I can't stress enough that students in our 612 program also require your support at home. If you opt to have your students enrolled in our cyber program, we would ask that you would be just as active a member of their learning process as you are now. That while they are signing on every day to do their work, that you are also following up with them, that you're asking them about their classes, the work that they've done, and any struggles that they may encounter. While we are experts in learning theory and teaching students, you are the expert on your child. So you are always our first point of contact whenever there may be an issue. Some of the other questions that have come up in our cyber program are specific to the technology. So when we look at our program, we are one-to-one, 6 through 12 for all of our students, brick and mortar, as well as in our cyber program. Our elementary students will all receive an iPad preloaded with all their grade level applications and programs. We know that at the K-5 level, pedagogically and developmentally, students are just better equipped to work when they're on an iPad. That is the best device for them. Students in grades 3 through 5, because they are starting to do some more advanced coursework, will also receive a keyboard that will Bluetooth to their iPad. At the secondary level, we will also deploy specific programs and applications to the students' laptops that they may need for a variety of their courses. For example, students in our video production or graphic design classes will have access to the Adobe suite of software. I do want to note that even though your students will be working from home, if they are on our district devices, that all of our devices are filtered for safety. So you will still have that protection. From a curricular lens, any materials that we provide to our students in our brick and mortar buildings will continue to be provided to your students. We will have a distribution point in August where we'll be able to provide you with all of your equipment, both the technology and curricular materials. For example, our math and focus workbooks or a social studies textbook at the elementary level. At the secondary level, all the classroom resources, interactive science labs, and online textbooks will be at your disposal. Materials that you would need for classes such as art would be available to you. So again, we will have that distribution in August. Our current plans are that we would have a family picnic for all of our cyber students. But as you can imagine, we are constantly evaluating that, and we will continue to follow the guidance of our local and state health officials as we plan for such events. Again, my name is Kristen Barnello. I'm the supervisor of 6 through 12 cyber. And if you have any additional questions specific to our cyber program, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Kristen. At this point, at the end of the presentation, everyone in attendance tonight will receive an email. In that email, there will be links to the recording of tonight's presentation, as well as enrollment links for our cyber program. We ask again that you have questions specific to your child, that you email the appropriate pupil services supervisor. There's also still up, once again, the QR code and the bit.ly link if you have any additional questions that you would like to see answered this evening. On the next slide, once again, you will see the contact information for the pupil services department. Please feel free to email the person that is best to answer your question. As well, if you are unable to remember this information, it is all posted on our website under the Pupil Services Code tab. At this time, I'm going to pass it along to Dr. Ranieri, who is looking up some of the questions, and she's going to answer them for you now.
Hi again, and I just want to share that there were some specific questions there about your individual child, and we're not going to address those tonight, but we will get back to you in the next couple days about your specific questions. But let me give you some of the ones that are more the general themes that came through that weren't answered necessarily within the presentation, and we'll take it from there. Do students have the same special education teacher if they're in the brick and mortar? So as I talked about before, being in the blended environment, they would see the same teacher in the building that they would if they were there in the hybrid model or full-time. There will be a special education teacher that is assigned to the cyber program that will be providing support. So that person would not necessarily be the person that they would see normally in the building. But for the other services in the brick and mortar, it would be the teacher they typically would receive. What if my daughter requires additional support and reading that I'm not able to help her with? We will be operating what is our multi-tiered system of supports, which is our intervention system that we have in our buildings. That will be operating as well in the cyber program. So if there are needs that a child has, that team will meet to discuss them and determine what kinds of interventions need to be put in place as a result of that. Parents or teachers can bring those concerns to the team's attention. If we have an emergency close, what will the direct instruction look like? So those services that would be provided typically in the brick and mortar would now be remote, which would be a combination of the synchronous and asynchronous instruction, in addition to what would be provided through the cyber program that the student is receiving. How is blended cyber different than the hybrid for a student? So the blended cyber we'll be getting instruction for every day in the cyber program. The blended part of it will be getting that in the brick and mortar versus the hybrid, which will be some days at home receiving instruction that will be synchronous for students or asynchronous, and some days in the brick and mortar. So there is a kind of that combination of that versus being cyber, which is mostly asynchronous with that brick and mortar setting. So I hope that that helped make sense. Okay, well, if your child is scheduled to be evaluated or was scheduled to be evaluated prior to the closure, or it needs to be evaluated for any of the services for special education, 504, English language, gifted, they can still take place. What we're doing though is they would take place in the building that your child typically would attend. We are looking at different models. We're using iPads so that it's kind of touchless as far as materials are concerned. It would also permit for social distancing to take place, but be in the same location. We're piloting that this summer with some of our psychologists, but that's how we would handle any kind of evaluation that would need to take place in the fall if a child is not already identified or needs to be reevaluated in some situations. My child has medical concerns and at our higher risk. So what we will do, and I shared, we'll need to have individual IEP meetings or 504 meetings to talk about what your child's needs are, which may need medical needs, and we'll have to determine how we can address them through the cyber program and or a combination of the brick and mortar, but that will be an individual decision. There were a couple questions about medical issues. So if there are medical issues, we will certainly be addressing them. There will be nurses in the brick and mortar portion of the program if needed. If there are accommodations that are needed, we will certainly look at that and how they can be addressed. What is the time frame for IEP and 504 meetings? For any student that is going to enroll in the cyber program, we will need to hold those prior to the school year starting. Obviously, this is now July 20th, and we are just starting this process to get those meetings scheduled, but over the course of the next 5-6 weeks, they will need to take place. And in some situations, it may be minor changes or no changes need to be made at all, and there are others that may be a little bit more complex that we need to address. Are we connecting with all students that have an IEP? No. Obviously, the information went out about the cyber program to all families in the district. We sent this in communication out to anyone that attended any of the presentations last week, as well as any parent that reached out to us individually with interest in our cyber program. This is a regular education program that is available for all students. It is not a special education program by design. So we didn't want to open it to every student with an IEP, although they are certainly welcome. Okay, and at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Missett, who's going to answer some of the questions that were raised about gifted.
Hi, everybody again. So some of the questions that came in from you refer to the secondary level. And I apologize if I wasn't clear about the secondary level. The secondary level GRT teachers will certainly be implementing the PADEA classes and the curriculum classes. And also if your child had an independent project, the GRTs at the high school level are responsible to implementing those services for your child. So are the classes similar to the brick and mortar as they are to the cyber? Yes, they are, and they will be. They will continue to do that for your gifted student. As I said, we now have one gifted resource teacher in each building, so we have the ability to do that. I think that kind of covers it. Where would the GIP services be held? We would do that virtually through a Zoom with your students, and how often per week? Per your GIEP. Depending upon what your services are in your GIEP, depends upon how often that the GRT will meet with your student. Another question that came in, maybe it was through an email, how about my enrichment kids that do not have a specific GIEP goal? The GRT teachers will still be reaching out to your student if they have an enrichment, especially those mods in the middle school level and the enrichment classes for our primary students. Dr. Ranieri, I think that covers my section.
Thank you, Dr. Missett. There were a couple more questions that came in as we were talking. One was about whether a student, if they were duly identified with as gifted and needing IEP, will be able to accommodate those needs. Yes, and again, we would do that through the IEP meeting, but we would invite the gifted resource teacher to be a part of that to talk about how those services could be provided. Progress monitoring was also raised as one of the questions in the cyber environment, and if a student has an IEP or GIP, we do need to progress monitor. We are looking at ways to be able to do that in the cyber environment and virtually with some of the tools that we have purchased, but that will definitely need to take place. Let me see if there was anything else. Will there be supports that are being provided through the cyber program? And as I shared earlier, there will be a designated special education teacher at the elementary and secondary level to provide ongoing support. The special education teachers that are in the brick and mortar will be handling the direct instruction they are responsible for, but we feel it's best that we have someone specifically designated for the cyber program because they are going to be much more familiar with the cyber curriculum, as well as how interventions or accommodations can be put into place for students in that cyber environment. So we will certainly be working as a team, but we will have separate roles for the special education teacher in the brick and mortar versus the cyber program. Just double check if there's anything else.
Leanne,
yes.
There was one more that seemed to came in after I spoke. Will a GIP meeting take place similar to how you described or your team described an IEP meeting? At the end of the year, you should have had a GIP meeting with your GRT. If that did not take place, you may email me, but according to that GIEP, that was signed at the end of the 2020 year will be in effect.
Okay, great. There's two other questions that came up at the very beginning, and I'm going to turn those over. I think Dr. Barnello is probably going to try to address those at this time.
Certainly. Thank you, Dr. Ranieri. So there were a few questions that are specific to the cyber program that I did want to address. At this time, I'm going to ask that one of our instructional technology coordinators post a link in the chat thread, and that link will take you to all of our previous Zoom sessions. So last week we held 3 Zoom sessions, one for elementary, one for middle school, and one for high school, that goes in depth into the program at the 3 levels. And while there are broad characteristics of a cyber program K through 12, each level is different, so I would encourage you to view those. So one question that came in is what supports are in place for all of our students as they learn to function in a fully cyber setting. For all of our students, we have built a cyber student orientation program, and that focuses on a lot of the executive functioning skills of time management, study skills, and all the skills that our students need in order to be successful in a fully cyber environment. Another question that did come up was about the deadline for enrollment. So while we know that we have asked for different deadlines, we are responding to the guidance of our state and local health officials. As you may know, last Thursday, the state did provide us with additional guidelines in regards to opening of schools this fall. Because of that, we did need to adjust our reopening plans, and as such have adjusted our timeline. We will now be presenting that plan to our school board in a special meeting on August 3rd. We are asking that families commit to the Westchester Cyber Program by August 7th. That will allow us time to make sure that our program is fully staffed for all the students that are interested in opting into our program. It will allow students to meet with the team as needed. And it will also allow us to make sure that we are ready for your students regardless of what format they're coming to us. So I think those were all the general education cyber program questions. But again, the email address is up there of wccyber@wcasd.net should you have any additional questions.
There's one more area that popped up towards the end of the questions that I will address, and that's related to related services. And that would be things such as speech, occupational and physical therapy, counseling services, things along those lines. And that's going to be an IEP team decision as to determine what's the best environment for students to receive those services. In most situations, that's in the brick and mortar setting. When we talk about speech specifically, it is challenging to do through remote or through cyber. I mean, it can be done depending on the type of skill that is being addressed. But obviously, when we're talking about sounds and articulation, that's something that it seems to work better in person. But that will be an IEP team decision. But if there are related services that is in a current IEP, we will need to address them, whether that be in the cyber program or in the brick and mortar setting. There still will be access to the school counselors and supports along those lines as well. I want to thank everyone tonight for coming out. I really appreciate your time. If we didn't address your specific question, we will get back to you. We have your email address and we will certainly do that. If there are additional questions, you have our contact information and we will certainly try to address those. Thanks again and have a great evening.